Hello, class. My name is Justin Young, and I am doing my presentation on Hurricane Katrina. So, just a little background about Hurricane Katrina. It occurred in the later days of August in 2005. It swept through the southern Gulf Coast, the New Orleans, Louisiana area. Approximately 1,800 people died during the storm, and then those numbers don't include people after or during the recovery process. That's, I believe it was north of 2,000. So the storm, it was a Category 5, which is a Category 5 hurricane, is a hurricane that exceeds 170 miles per hour. It started off as a 1 overnight, built up to a 3, and then surely enough, it went to 4 and then 5 as it hit the areas like New Orleans. And this a hurricane of this magnitude, it destroyed houses, businesses, obviously killing 1,800 people. Sorry, it was destroying lives. It affects those people who now don't have homes, those people who lost someone, and much more. It had approximately $150 in damages, and that includes everything, as in houses, businesses, land, the leaves, the 250, or so I guess because of those damages, there was breaks in the walls of the levees, and after the hurricane, there was 250 billion gallons of water that had to be removed from the city of New Orleans due to the disaster. There were pump stations that were not working, um, which were those were designed to raise and lower water in kind of the area where the water was kept, kind of like it was kind of like a dam type thing. So the levees, when their walls were breached, it was in 50 different spots, but that was before the hurricane actually hit um, New Orleans. The walls were breaching prior to that, just due to the rainfall in the previous days leading up to the hurricane, and ultimately that helped kickstart the damage um, that was to be done to New Orleans. It even made it a little harder for evacuation to happen because there was already water filling the streets and filling the city before the hurricane even was able to touch down. So, strategic leadership. In any situation, especially through a natural disaster, no one's just going to be able to lead their way through it. You got to be strategic. You got to be smart. Um, Coming from looking at a government perspective, it's going to be every decision the government, the president, your mayor, whoever it is makes in a situation like this during a disaster, they're going to be criticized or they're going to be praised. So it's all how you react and handle the situation. In this situation, there was the president of the United States at the time, George Bush. He may have sent the wrong message as a strategic leader. You can see on the right here is a photo of him in his plane flying over the damage that had been done. He was flying over because initially, when the storm warnings came in, it wasn't seen as that big of an issue or it was going to be that big of a storm. So the president didn't actually know about the storm. He was away on vacation in Texas, I believe, at his ranch, and on his vacation, he's kind of one of those things where you keep to yourself, kind of get away from media, basically get away from reality, and kind of just hang out and enjoy a life away from work. Uh, but his staff at the White House, they didn't want to bother him on his vacation um, because they didn't see this disaster getting to this magnitude. So eventually they figured it's probably best that the president know, like, we need his help. And after the damage had been done, this photo is where I say he sent the wrong message, um, flying over the damage instead of maybe being a more hands on deck type approach. So this picture that was released, it people viewed it as the president being detached and uncaring. That's something you don't want in a strategic leader. Um, and once that narrative's already written and it hits TVs and newspapers and the media, there isn't really it's hard to go back from that. Sorry. So sending the wrong message could be is a big downfall. You gotta send the right message and realize how it could be interpreted before you send that message out, especially during a time like this where people are relying on their leaders, such as their local government or the state government or the president, for this example. So, next to be a strategic leader, you need good communication, but there was a lack of communication throughout this whole process. Um, for example, the Homeland Security Director Michael Chertoff was working with Michael Brown, who's the FEMA director, and he assumed that Chertoff assumed that Brown had things under control, and that was essentially because when Bush went down to the wreck after this photo was taken to kind of see from what the damage was from a ground perspective, Bush praised Brown and said he was doing a good job. So that's where the lack of communication came in, because by hearing that and seeing that, Chertoff assumed that all was good and Brown had things under control. But in reality, he didn't have things under control, which brings me to failure to align and adapt. They failed to align the needs and to adapt what was going on. The people needed their help, and the help needed to come from all areas. But when you have one director, uh, I guess, trying to solve this problem and trying to fix it, and the other ones are just not really invested in it. They're just, oh, okay, you got it under control. That's good. They all need to be hands on deck, and that's going to come from communication. You need to be open and honest with your communication. Which, if that was the case, it could have led to maybe saving a lot more people. And then the wrong people on the bus. So the wrong people on the bus is, I guess, the people who you surround yourself with, who was on your bus. So Michael Brown was previously a supervisor at horse shows. He supervised judges at horse shows, sorry. And he went on to work for Bush's political aide, who was Joe Alba, which he became. Brown became FEMA deputy director within 2 years of working in FEMA. And this was all because of his connection in politics, I'd say. Um, Alba was a friend of Bush's, and Brown was a friend of Bush's. So Bush hired these two based off more so friendship, considering they had no experience in disaster management at all or anything like that. And they failed to listen to um, other professional and other outside opinions, which can be an issue because you can't have that tunnel vision. You got to be able to have open mind and be okay with being challenged and having your decisions challenged, which is something we'll get into shortly. But with the wrong people on the bus, it's going to be hard to align your goals. It's going to be hard to adapt because you're not going to want to listen to the next person beside you, and you're not gonna be able to challenge one another because you're just not gonna have that communication. You're gonna go off on your own page and try and do it yourself, which was kind of seen throughout this disaster. So align, one of the 6 essential skills. So to align, having everyone on the same page. So like I said, um, you need that communication if you're going to be on the same page. And the hiring of these 2 individuals, Joe Albo and Michael Brown, with no disaster experience, failed to align the ideas of medical professionals, other professionals, and citizens that gave their opinion on who should be appointed in their spots instead. They went to that personal connection. Went with that personal connection over maybe the professional decision, which it's easy to pick someone who you're friends with or someone you're close to, but when you're doing that for picking up someone to help save your country in case of a disaster, I think you should be picking who's more qualified and who's going to get the job done opposed to who you're going to get along with the most. So that comes with the multiple perspectives. You got to get other people's opinions, and maybe go into their previous work relations, as in like other areas they've worked. Talk to their bosses, talk to their coworkers, ask how they were in certain situations, maybe under pressure. Did they go above and beyond? What kind of person are they? I think that ultimately could have led to a hiring of more qualified people. But in the end of the day, 2 people were hired that were not qualified, and it showed during the disaster. Michael Brown actually eventually got replaced by, I think it was the number 3 official of the Coast Guard, Thad Allen. So shortly after the disaster, he was replaced, and Thad took over his position. So to challenge, obviously, no disaster is going to be easy. As a president, as a local governor, as your mayor, nothing's going to be easy because you're not going to be able to please everyone. But during a time like this, it's going to be challenging to prevent as much damage as you can. It's going to be challenging to recover after a hurricane like this, where it's going to nearly wipe out the whole city, flood the whole city, affect literally everyone. So that's going to be hard, but it's also going to be hard to challenge the status quo. So as a strategic thinker, you question the status quo and challenge other people's views and thoughts, which was failed to do. So back to the Michael Brown example, it wasn't questioned. Bush didn't question his decision. He didn't get outside listen to outside opinions, which made this disaster harder because you had people that were not qualified and not knowing what they were doing. And then they didn't challenge the status quo. So Chertoff actually went to a conference in Atlanta because he thought that was more important than staying back and resolving or mitigating the issues with Hurricane Katrina. And that's because Brown said he had things under control, he had a plan. So he put that trust in him instead of challenging him, saying, like, maybe, okay, you got the plan, but what else can we do? What else can we do to help the people affected by this disaster? Which challenging the status quo. It's not to be rude, but if you're a leader and you can't be challenged, I think maybe that's a sign that you shouldn't be in that position. You need to be able to be challenged and help you think outside the box, and help you become a better leader ultimately, which is opposed to being a yes man. So, for example, Bush went down, and when he talked to Brown said, "Oh yeah, everything's under control," and you just agree. You kind of, whenever questions are asked or you ask questions, it's kind of just, "Yep,